July the 5th, 2023, and we'll begin with our roll call. Aniskevich?
Here.
Gippin?
Here.
Peebles?
Here.
Lewis?
Here.
Castle?
Here.
Costa?
Here.
Richards?
Here.
Reed?
Here.
Boyd here. And now can I get a approval of last meeting's minutes?
So move.
Get a second?
Second.
All right, is there any discussion regarding the minutes? If not, we'll move forward and we'll roll call the accepting of those minutes. Aniskevich?
Yes.
Gippin?
Yes.
Peoples?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Castle?
Yes.
Costa?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Boyd, yes. Thank you so much. Now we're on the part of our agenda where we're going to have public comment. And how many do we have this evening, Ms. Aniskevich?
At the moment, I have two.
Have two for public comment. Before we lean into public comment, let me just make this statement. Public comment is something that we want to continue to do because we believe it is necessary that we hear and give platform for our public to make their comments to this board. However, we want to make sure that as we make those comments that we do not personally attack any board member or demean them. That's not what we're here to do. And because everybody here is given their time to serve this community. So we want to honor and respect this situation, this platform, but more importantly, let's respect the chambers as much as we can. If you feel that you cannot do that, I will politely ask you to sit down or even be removed from chambers, okay? All right, go ahead, Ms. Aniskevich. And
Okay.
Ms. Reed, you'll be keeping the time. Ms. Richards, thank you.
Okay, Apostolette.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It's good to see everybody this evening, and I want to thank you for welcoming me to the committee meeting on last week. It was very interesting. And Mr. Chairman, there was some very disrespectful behavior in that committee meeting, and someone may want to monitor that. Totally disrespectful. And that's not appropriate ever. This is a letter I wrote to you all. Dear board members and those of concern, as I stand before you this day, even as ambushments against me as we speak in this place from many opposers, from my speaking truth to power and to those with others on another agenda that are not good for any of us, I come to you not as one who has no hope, but with solutions for our present day situations for those of you who will schedule time to do so with me. It's time for us to come and reason together. Number one, statistics stated that $1.2 billion has been spent in sexual trafficking of girls in this country. The governor of Colorado signed a bill called the Kill More Babies bill. In my lifetime, as I stated in the council meeting on Monday, I've lived to see that when there's a federal election and a judicial election, the compromise of black people and multiracial people increases, the murder and also the mass incarceration and the other components of our compromise as we people of color, as my being a multiracial, and it's deemed as civil and procedural. And the police, law enforcement is allowed to murder us, and it's called civil and procedure. There's something drastically wrong with that. And the country leaders are not outraged by this. And I ask that you review records to see that we women of color and our male counterparts, our children, are the statistics in this, not for racial outrage, but for records to be updated. It's time to stop ending this mass incarceration and this murder and this compromise of we people of color in this country during federal and judicial elections. There's something wrong, and nobody's questioning it. Nobody's challenging it. Instead, people of color are getting induced and introduced also into the pro-slavery amendment, which is a component of this. It's time to end that nonsense. I just want to thank you all for listening to me when I come down here. I'm not talking to assault the character of anyone, and I'm really, Mr. Chairman and board members, I'm very concerned about the assault of the police chief, of his character in this city. He's a very good man. He comes to community meetings.
Time.
And I just want to just say, I don't like that at all, as well as what happened with Mr. Cozart. And I made copies of this for you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Apostolette.
God bless you all. Have a good evening. I gotta go. Thank you for your time.
Reverend Joyce Penfield, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I come today before you as a pastor, as one of the 5 initiators of the signers of the petition that ended up being issued 10 and ended up forming this committee. I come today before you as a mother of 3 black children. I was married to a Nigerian for 10 years. I had 3 children. We had 3 children. And the second one was pretty well beaten up by 6 large police when he was 13. That was 35 years ago, and it wasn't in Akron. So I come today before you because of the recent happening on July 1st. A video has been circulating of Jordan D., I don't know how to pronounce it, I'll say Ellie, on Saturday at 7 p.m. on Copley Road in front of the Family Dollar. The video is atrocious. It's morally repugnant. It's completely out of norm for standards of any type of use of force. And I'm bringing this to you because one of the provisions of the initiation of the mandate, the petition, is to work on policing and training, et cetera, not directly with this committee, but in consultation with the mayor and also the chief of the Department of Police. I brought something with you that might be a little more positive because we in Akron sometimes think that we're starting from scratch. But Ferguson was also, it was studied by the U.S. Department of Justice. I hope that will happen here. This use of brutal force that we all saw that went viral just gives another explanation for why we need to have an impartial outside force to investigate patterns of practice of policing that are both racially based and brutal. In the Ferguson outcome of the U.S. Department of Justice, they investigated violation of citizens' Fourth Amendment right, the right for seizure and search, in terms of what had been happening in Ferguson. And a commission was formed, and that commission called for, throughout the state actually, to revise the use of force policies and training. I don't know what the use of force policy is in this police department, but I would study it. Can I continue with that? And so what they were looking at was they directed the police departments across the state to revise their policies and training on the use of force to authorize only the minimal amount of force necessary to protect a citizen and officer safety that's proportional to the incident, that brings an unlawful situation safely and effectively under control, and that preserves the constitutional and human rights of the citizen. I did not see much of that in the video. I don't know about you. So I'm bringing this forward so it doesn't get left in the discussion of the complaint procedure, which is really a good place to begin and to keep going. But in the meantime, we have other things that continue. I'd just like to urge that if there's a vote for actually having subpoena power, go for it, because we need a lot of help from you in terms of getting this addressed. Sorry, I went over.
Thank you, Reverend
Thank you,
Joyce.
Reverend Penfield.
Is that everyone, Ms. Enniskevic?
That's everyone that I had a paper for. Is there anyone else who did not fill out a form? Okay.
All right. Thank you for the public comment. It is, Pastor Beatty?
Yes.
It's very difficult for me to get here on time, and I apologize. But thank you for your kindness. I, too, saw in the paper a very courageous young lady, apparently, took a video of the 2 policemen that attacked Mr. Eli. I want to share how I see the difference in policing between a predominantly black community and my neighborhood. Before I came down here, I heard that a bell ring, and it was my neighbor down the street riding downhill with his partner, and it was one of my friends, the policeman down the street. There are several things that I would submit to the committee to look at in this instance. First of all, the city council voted to outlaw chokeholds, but the picture I saw in the Beacon Journal was the white officer in a chokehold of Mr. Eli. That's illegal. The next problem is the chief of police is going to wait until the FOP and the internal affairs has a lengthy investigation. There's no investigation needed to see what is illegal by this policeman. Another instance of inadequate policing or differences of policing. Mr. Eli's license plate was investigated. I don't think license plates in my neighborhood are ever investigated by the police. Another thing that happens on Copley Road, there are 3 departments that regularly police that road: the Akron Police, the Sheriff's Department, and the State Patrol. And they're all looking for something wrong with the police. This man had his 1-year-old child with him when they brutally assaulted him. Another thing, I don't think police should call a black man bro and then brutally beat him.
Time.
Thank you. A lot to investigate. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Beatty.
Let's go forward with our subcommittee report out. We'll start with governance. Mr. Gippen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governance Committee met at 5 o'clock, actually on the table here, pursuant to notice. The business was the consideration of the draft rules that we've been discussing, and the committee voted to recommend the draft that was last circulated. So I will move that the draft rules that were submitted to the board today be adopted to substitute in their entirety for the rules that we previously adopted at our first meeting. Assuming that the motion is seconded, Mr. Chairman, I would propose that I be permitted to give some explanation of the main features of the draft, that there be whatever other discussion tonight the board might want to have, but that otherwise that there would be a motion to table final consideration until next week, which is the schedule that we had talked about. So I do make the motion to adopt this set of draft rules to substitute for the existing rules.
You do have permission, Mrs. Gippen, to discuss further. Do I have a second on the motion? All right, we'll move into discussion.
And I have some hard copies. Do any board members need a hard copy?
I like a hard
Is there 2? Just one. And Mr. Chairman, before I go through the main points, I did want to say that I did have a conversation with Mr. Angeloni of the Law Department, who has, of course, has had lead with the matters concerning us. Given the time, particularly with the long weekend, it was difficult to, first of all, complete this draft, but also to find time to speak with him. I have to say he's really bent over backwards to find the time and do the work to help with this. So we had quite a productive conversation this afternoon about it. And I should tell the board that there are a couple of points. I'll get to them in the detail, but there are a couple of points where Mr. Angeloni may recommend that there be some changes. We will speak again, of course, in the coming week, getting Law Department's input as well as anybody else's input that wants to give it. But I think there is, right now, I would say there's a probability that I would take it to governance, of course, next week, but that there would be some recommended amendments to this draft before coming to a final vote, next week. But very helpful. I think the things that may be changed, I think, will improve the draft. So I wanted to mention that. The key thing to note in this draft is that it incorporates the decision we made last week as to the scope of our authority. And I'd like to point out where you see that. It is not terribly obvious, so that's why I want to point it out. On page 5, Rule 4E2, the first line, this concerns the investigation of citizen complaints, public complaints. The board and the OIPA may at any time conduct investigations of complaints, and that those simple words, at any time, reflect the decision we made last week as to authority. You see that again on the next page, on page 6 in F. This concerns general review and including review of police officer conduct without a complaint, and concerning use of force, use of deadly force. Again, in the second line, you see the words at any time, which is what carries that decision of last week.
Is that on page 6?
6.
Which paragraph?
6F, second line.
Okay.
Or it's F. You see it again on page 7. This concerns subpoenas and the request of records from the city. That's J1. Same simple words. In the second line, shall have the authority at any time to issue and serve subpoenas. I may also incorporate that in the section, the next section about request of records, just to be clear. It's not in this draft. So that, in some ways, that may be the most significant thing to be aware of in these rules, is the use of the words at any time, so that we're not constrained simply to review after the fact.
Mr. Gippen, could you just give clarity, I think, to our audience and to the public as far as when we say investigations, who are conducting those investigations?
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's actually made, and if I may go to that, it's another key point, a part of this. If you go to page 6, paragraphs, well, this is really in paragraph 3, subparagraph 3, concerning, again, investigations of complaints. The procedures, and I'll get about what we're talking about procedures, but shall provide that investigations will be conducted by the OIPA, the auditor, and the auditor's staff, with only such involvement by members of the board, that is to say, us, as will facilitate such investigations and will keep the board adequately informed concerning them. In other words, the investigations will be done by the professionals, by the OIPA and the deputy auditor. And you see in the next sentence, provides as necessary in the absence of some or all of the OIPA staff, as we have now. Procedures may provide for active participation by board members in the processing of complaints, but not for investigations by such members. In other words, these rules would make it clear that we are not to be investigating, only overseeing and participating as will facilitate and inform us.
Mr. Gippen, can you then, and that makes sense, can you then explain the scope of what you mean by processing? Not investigating, but processing. What do you mean by that?
It's basically what we're doing now, but I have not, I mean, it's to the extent I've thought it through, it's what we're doing now. In the intake, the work that Mr. Peoples is doing and that Mr. Fields may undertake if we approve that contract, just the flow of the complaint.
Okay, so we'll just monitor that then, is that what you
Well,
mean?
this says and what we're doing, I mean, as necessary, we may actually be directly involved just in that handling of paper, if you like, as we're doing.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, does that answer your question? A few other things to, just to note, and these are changed from the initial rules that we adopted. If you look on page 2, the very top, Rule 1.0, you see the reference to procedures, which means procedures adopted by us pursuant to these rules. And then throughout the draft, you see in many, many places where matters of detail as to how things will be done, such as investigations, are left to procedures that would be adopted. In other words, these rules are a general document, which much would be left of the detail that would be worked through to procedures that would be drafted, presented through governance to the board. One of the things that may need to be clarified with the law department is the question of whether or not procedures we adopt would likewise need to be approved by council. My own view legally is that the charter is ambiguous on that, and that given the ambiguity, it would be more, I think, practical, particularly in these first days of the board, for us to be able to adopt procedures and change them, fairly freely without needing to go to council, every time we wanted to change a procedure. My guess is council would like that too. But this is something that's going to be one of the points of discussion with the law department. It may be that the law department's going to be of a different view. I would think we would defer to that view, but I would hope that the procedures would not need to go to council. But that's something to be aware of. And again, the whole structure of this really turns on these general principles for the most part, and then with detailed procedures to be adopted. That's sort of the structure of this is laid out that way. As to meetings, we've had the discussion about how often we would meet. In Rule 3B1 on page 2, you see that it provides for a minimum of one meeting per month, but that we could determine at any time how frequently we wanted to have regular meetings, and of course there is the provision for special meetings. What else? Those are, I think, the main points. As the charter provides, the auditor will supervise the auditor's staff. There is language here that, as necessary, we would communicate with the staff, as we have in the current situation, potentially would direct them in the absence of the auditor, but that would be only in the absence of the auditor. Mr. Chairman, I think those are the main points that are different from what we've had before. I should point out there's in 4M on page 8, there's language that's called additional powers. That's intended just to clarify that we can conduct activities, I think it's more the meaning, that may not be specifically noted in the charter or in the rules as necessary. For example, entering into the contract, with Mr. Fields. I think that language is going to change in discussion with the law department. I think properly powers may have been a wrong choice of words, so it may be changed to something, may conduct such additional activities or some such, but I wanted to point that out. Above that, I should also note in committees, it does have language that under procedures we could have non-voting members that we've discussed. It does not require that we do so, but this would give us the ability to do it subsequently if we decided to, under procedures. Mr. Chairman, that's all. I think those are the high points. I'd be happy to answer any other questions or if there's other discussion by any members tonight.
Mr. Gibbon, I think you undersell it. There was a lot of big changes made here, but I wanted to commend you for your leadership and really organizing this process. It's a lot has happened here. And I just wanted to point out that under Rule 3F, there's also additional language to provide additional flexibility with respect to our meetings and providing for our ability to meet virtually and for us to meet to the extent that City Council and its committees are able to as well.
Thank you. I forgot that was included, yeah.
Ms. Gibbon, again, just want to piggyback and echo what Mr. Costa said. Really appreciate your leadership with our governance subcommittee. I think that we're making some of the change to these rules not where we've been, but where we want to go as an oversight board, but also within the independent police auditor department. And so I really, and I know I speak on behalf of the whole board, we really appreciate the work and the time that was put in by you and your subcommittee, that be Mr. Costa as well as Ms. Castle. And so where would you further like to go with this, Mr.
I would move to table my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do I got a second?
Second.
All right, let's roll call it. Aniskevich?
Yes.
Gippin?
Yes.
Peoples?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Castle?
Yes.
Costa?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Boyd, yes.
I wanted to say something under discussion.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. I have been saying from the very beginning that my biggest issue on this board was that we would have the opportunity to have subpoena power. You know, I read that before this board even formed. I read that in the NACOL literature, that's every board, no matter what city. It's every police review board's biggest challenge with their police departments and their police unions is to be able to get subpoena power. You know, that's going to be our mainstay for being able to investigate fully and thoroughly any of these complaints. And I really commend you for having that in there, having strict language about it. There's no way that anyone can assume that you mean anything other than what's written, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, but the charter does provide us with subpoena power. It's really more a question of when and to what extent it can be used. This choice of drafting reflects, again, the decision we made last week. So it's really, it's this whole board that made the choice to push the subpoena power as far as the charter would permit.
But the FOP is not going to, that's going to be a big challenge, the FOP, with this subpoena power.
Was there another comment? Mr. Gibbon, did you have anything else for your?
No, Mr. Chairman, we're done. I should, let me just note just so it's clear, the next governance meeting has already been set, scheduled, noticed. It's going to be at the Northwest Branch Library on Chateau in Northwest Akron. And we'll be taking up, whatever, again, I expect there will be changes. We'll take up whatever changes there may be to this draft for presentation a week from tonight. So again, if people are interested in the rules, please try to be at that meeting.
Just for clarification, Mr. Gibbon, is that a week from tonight or is that next Tuesday?
Did I say from tonight? The meeting is the 11th at 5. If we need to piggyback finance again, Mr. Costa, we can work that through. But it's noticed for 5, again, at the Northwest Branch Library on Chateau. And then we would it would be come off the table for vote a week from tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Gippen. Before we move on to HR, I do want to let everyone know, if you want to access the agenda for tonight's meeting, you can do that from our webpage. Is that correct, Ms. Castle?
Yes, it's been uploaded to the webpage at akronohio.gov.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, should I do something to get this draft uploaded on the website, or is that, Ms. Castle, is that something you've been doing routinely?
So right now, we don't have a structure to do so, but if you send it to me, that is something that we are
Well,
exploring.
you've got it. If you
Yep,
wouldn't mind, or I can do it with Ms. Marsh.
Yep, nope, I will, we're still working on what that looks
Great,
like.
I appreciate it.
So I'll provide updates.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you again to Mr. Gippen and the Governance Subcommittee. We're going to move on now with HR with Ms. Richards.
Thank you. I got confirmation again from the city today that Mr. Young is still unavailable to us. And again, no word on how long that will be. We did not meet as a subcommittee due to the holidays, but I was in contact with the law department, and I have forwarded to you a draft of the contract for Mr. Fields. I did send it to him as well for his response to see if he needed or wanted any additions or subtractions, and he has not got back to me. What I would like to do is vote tonight on our end that we approve the contract, and then if he wants amendments, we can revote next week after we hear from him. But if he doesn't, then we can start this process.
Is that the contract for Mr. Fields?
Yes.
Hey,
Mr. Chair?
I have, go ahead.
Yes.
Can we take a look at this contract? I just got it at 4:35 today.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Same here.
I apologize. I was trying to wait as long as possible for his response, just in case he wanted any amendments. And we can just table it to next week if we want to as well, since he hasn't responded and you guys didn't get a chance to review it.
Do I have a motion to table it?
Yeah, let
Mr.
me-
Chairman, before that, I don't know if this matters, I mean, but I did briefly talk about the contract with Mr. Angeloni. He asked what else we got tonight. I mean, he pointed out that the process of getting the contract actually in place, not that it's going to be very difficult, but there are steps. I mean, the city's going to need, for one thing, it needs to be executed by the city, but they're going to need such things as W-9 and so on for Mr. Fields, because apparently he has not done business with the city before as a vendor. Frankly, in the interest of time, I liked your original idea, which is that we would vote on it tonight. I don't know of any reason not to. If Mr. Fields does have some strong objection to language, we can always change it, but frankly, I would prefer to move ahead. You've done great work lining this up so fast, and Ms. Chevich has too. I frankly would rather do it tonight.
Let me just, hold on, please. Mr. Fields contacted me early this morning and said that he had questions about the contract. And I texted him back and told him I had an appointment at 9, but I would get back with him. But at that time, Ms. Richards had not sent the contract out, so I didn't have a contract to read to answer any of his questions. So later on in the afternoon, I spoke with him, and I said, well, I still don't have a copy of the contract, so I don't know what you're talking about. So can you just read some things to me that you're concerned about? So what he was concerned about was the overall scope of the auditor's position, all the language, the auditor, deputy auditor, and administrative assistant. So I explained to him that he would not have to do all of those duties on his own, and that if he had any more questions to contact Ms. Richards. But this was later on in the afternoon, and again, this was sent out late. So, but he did say he was going to sign it.
Ms. Sanders, I think for the use of alignment, I would have redirected him to Ms. Richards from the very beginning.
You would have what?
Redirected him to Ms.
I
Richards
did,
from the very
but
beginning.
I did redirect him to her.
Okay.
But, he was just, he sounded very, antsy about it, and I didn't have a copy of it. But what he read to me, I said, well, it sounds like what's going to go on when all of our positions are filled. But he did say he was going to sign it.
Ms. Richards.
And that he was going to call her. if he had more questions.
So, Ms. Richards, to Mr. Gippens' point, do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion that we vote on the contract for services as it's written tonight.
Second.
I want to open this up for discussion. I'm going to speak from my position. I think best practice is that I would have loved for us to get at least 3 consulting contracts instead of just 1, so we had some things to choose from. I don't know how good that I feel personally with going with Mr. Fields, not that I have anything against him or any work that he's done. I just always think anytime you're getting a consultant, best practice is to at least get 3 to choose from, so that way we're comparing, if you will, apples to apples, versus just staying in line with this one. And I don't want us to function from the prospect of the tyranny of the urgent.
Okay.
Just
I
from
would
a-
think that that would have been something that you could have brought out several weeks ago.
I did, it's in the minutes.
So I think because of the circumstances that we were under, we moved forward in that under this specialized situation and the specialized services that Mr. Fielder is able to provide, it kind of made sense to move forward. To be completely honest, I've got maybe 1 or 2 wording changes or things that I would change under the draft contract, but to be honest, I think it sufficiently provides us the flexibility to pivot or maneuver. I think it addresses our needs. It's based off of a preliminary 12-week term that provides us with a renewal option as well too. So, you know, we're not locking ourselves into anything. And I completely agree. I'd love to consider what the additional aspects are out there or what additional opportunities are out there. But I think I think we've been saying for far too long that we just got to get some hands on board. And I think that this contract provides us the opportunity to not only observe the way that Mr. Fields carries out the duties that we're asking him to in a light that is different from our existing auditor, which then may help us to inform our own procedures. But again, I think it provides us enough flexibility to where we can pivot and we can make additional changes if we don't want to renew the contract. So I am in favor of it. I've got like 1 minor revision that I would make, but I don't think that it's overly material. And so from my respect, I'm good with this contract in its present form.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with you what process might have looked like, but we are where we are. And I mean, minimally, we'd lose another month if we were to go back and now try to find, 2 other additional consultants. I just don't think we can afford that now, so that on balance, I likewise intend to vote yes.
I agree. I don't know where we would even, and again, this is someone that I've known, this is someone that I've worked with on cases that are high more profile than what we're going to be working on here. And he's very thorough, he can hit the ground running. He has his own staff that, might be interested later on in filling some of the positions if we can't get them filled. So, if you have 2 other people who are interested, then fine. But right now, time is of the essence.
Any further discussion?
And this is probably a question that just can be handled with the HR subcommittee. Are we going to do any more interviews with Mr. Fields? Because while I feel that he is ready to do the job based on what he said last week, this person is going to be working a lot closely with us. And my first and only time actually talking with him was just last week when he came to the meeting. So can he at least come to our subcommittee meeting and we can have a more in-depth discussion about the contract? Not necessarily that it needs to stagnate the process tonight or to hold anything up. I just want to make sure that we can have a more in-depth conversation with him.
I think that's an excellent idea.
And so do I. And actually, he asked me when I spoke with him this afternoon, he asked me who would he be directly be answering to, and I said, well, the entire board, but I think what he meant was like if he had a question or if there was an issue, who would he be directly having to go to? And I said, well, right now, Ms. Richards is the chairperson of our Human Resource Committee, but that's something that we may have to discuss. I don't know.
So I guess the question would be, if Mr. Young were here, would he be responsible for communicating with you? Because to my knowledge, it was our chair that he was reporting to.
It was when we first began to start, but as we began to streamline processes, we felt like anytime it was a work-related venture, it was going to be going through Ms. Richards and HR, because she's the one that's tracking a lot of the processes, if you will, the workflows that we're trying to establish within the department. And then obviously Ms. Richards will communicate with myself and Ms. Aniskevich if she has any further questions. Is that correct in what am I thinking, Ms. Richards?
Yeah, I think we talked about that, but we've never even had a chance to implement that before he left.
But Ms. Richards, my question would be, is that how you would want that flow to be?
That's fine with me.
Okay.
If I may, if we're going to do that, and if it's something that everyone on the subcommittee needs to know, I personally would appreciate having notice a little bit earlier than later on certain things as they come up. Like this, I didn't even see this until tonight, till we got here. And I was pretty much on my computer on and off all day, and I didn't see the contract.
And I didn't send it, I explained that.
Yes, but I'm just saying maybe, a little bit earlier would be helpful.
Any further discussions?
Thank you, Ms. Richards.
Yep, thank you. So we got a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded, and the vote is to accept the contract?
I understood the motion to be to approve the contract, yes.
Okay.
I second.
Well, it's already been seconded. Yeah,
Oh.
that's all right. All right, so let's move on to roll call. Everybody ready? Any further discussions? Nope. Aniskevich?
Yes.
Gibbon?
Yes.
Peoples?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Castle?
No.
Costa?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Reed?
I'd like to hear more about Ms. Castle's no to the vote.
I ultimately was going to defer to the recommendation from the HR subcommittee, but to your point, Ms. Reed, I think it's going to be invaluable for, as a subcommittee, you guys to interview him and make that thorough analysis. So I'm just a little concerned that that hasn't occurred. So I would like for that interview process with the HR subcommittee to happen before we move forward with the contract.
Ms. Reed?
I'm going to go ahead and say yes, but Caitlin, thank you for offering your insight to your answer, and I agree, but we're going to talk to him.
Yeah, and, I don't see not moving forward and not having talked.
We have a vote. We have a vote, Ms. Aniskevich. Boyd, I vote no.
Well, he did get up last week, if you all recall, and talked about himself and his experience. But I guess I don't see the subcommittee not having sat down and interviewed him, 4 people interviewing him. I don't see that as a reason to not move forward with the contract. I just see that as a formality. I just see that as a formality of moving forward with the contract.
It passed, Ms. Aniskevich.
Yeah,
So,
well,
yeah, it's passed, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all, Mr. Chairman. I just was going to ask you to declare the vote, and it did
Yeah,
pass.
it passed, absolutely.
I have one more item. I did
Yes.
receive the background check on our admin 3, and I would like to call for a executive session to discuss the personnel matter.
Mr. Chairman, can I suggest that we put that matter off to the end of the meeting? The media might want to stay because we'd probably be voting, but rather than asking everybody to leave the room now.
Totally. That's all.
I want to add to this, since we are at HR, I received a copy of Mr. Young's office that I'll be giving over to Mr. Peoples at the end of the night, so that way, Mr. Peoples, once you have identified like any type of office hours that you would like to keep, we can post those on our webpage with Ms. Castle, so I'll let you determine what that looks like. I know you said last week your off days, and so whatever you would want that to look like, there's a key that way you can, if anybody needs to meet you within that space, you have it.
Okay.
So I just wanted to let the board know that, as well as Mr. Peoples. Is that all, Ms. Richards?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for your report out, and thank you for your service. Ms. Lewis and Community Engagement?
Thank you. So I'd like to first share the final draft of the functions of the community engagement. You had an opportunity to read it beforehand, but I'd like to read it again so that, you know, we in turn can make a motion to adopt it if there are no questions. So the subcommittee members...
Excuse me, Ms. Lewis, and this is it right here? I just want to make sure I got
Yes.
the right thing. Thank you.
That's it right there, you're welcome. And so the subcommittee members are Sean Peoples, Robert Gibbon, Caitlin Castle, and myself, the chair. Community Engagement Subcommittee will provide a process that gives the community a chance to participate in and influence the administrative tasks and decision-making of the Citizens Police Oversight Board. The purpose of the Community Engagement Subcommittee will be to serve as a bridge between the community members and the citizens of the Police Oversight Board. This will include assisting the Akron Police Department in fostering strong community relations. The objectives are as follows: encourage the Citizens Police Oversight Board members and community stakeholders to participate in the board-sponsored community events. And the second one is educate community members about the Citizens Police Oversight Board and include them in designing, facilitating collaborative outreach and align with the mission of the Citizens Police Oversight Board. Empower the community members to actively participate in the work of the Citizen Board by creating multiple avenues for community engagement and for providing their input into the board. And the last point, engage all community stakeholders in the work of the Citizens Police Oversight Board. Membership. The Citizens Police Oversight Board Community Engagement Subcommittee will consist of at least 3 members who are appointed by the Citizens Oversight Board for their expertise, experience, knowledge, and community outreach, and shall serve for a term of 2 years. Members may be reappointed. Meetings. The Community Engagement Subcommittee will meet at least once a month. However, in its present state, launch and event planning cycle, we will meet bi-weekly. Networking events may require some weekend attendance. The community engagement meetings are open to the public with agendas posted to the City of Akron and the Citizens Police Oversight Board webpage. So if there are no questions or additions, I'd like to make a motion to accept the final draft.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussions or questions for Ms. Lewis? All right, we'll move into a roll call vote. Ms. Aniskevich?
Yes.
Gippon?
Yes.
Peoples?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Castle?
Yes.
Costa?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Boyd? Yes. Thank you, Ms. Lewis, and for your team for your hard work.
And on to a few other items. So we've secured Mason Park for our meet, greet, and eat. It will be held Sunday, August the 13th at 2 p.m. We only had one subcommittee member, or I beg your pardon, board member who wasn't able to attend that, so everybody's on board with that. Next week, we'll have flyers for everyone. On last week, I shared about the 2 organizations that we reached out to regarding conducting the survey. One was Professor Brantley of the University of Akron School of Law, and the other was the Summit County Public Health. I didn't have an opportunity at that time to talk with one of the representatives from the Center for Opinion and Marketing Research, But I have heard back from them, and they are very interested in conducting the survey as well. So we do have 3 representatives to do the survey. You've probably seen the Center for Opinion and Marketing Research in the Beacon several times. They did the Akron Decides, and that was the election results, and they had a really nice breakdown. So they are the ones who appear to be ready to go. My only apprehension about the law students, as much as I'd like for them to participate, they won't be back until August. So that delays us having to, go forward with that. I'm not sure that that's a good fit for them, although I'd like to see them participate in another capacity. I'd like to be able to have the survey ready to present to the public at the meet and greet, along with hopefully having our website up, and that was something I wanted to discuss on the floor, since we have a budget for the website, to be able to get it up and running so that we can drive the traffic to our website and be able to provide information to the public that way. Thirdly, I am not sure if we need to begin to formulate the questions here on this floor or within the subcommittee, and my unreadiness is, what are we looking for with regard to the survey? We've mentioned a lot of things, and so I just want to maybe put it before the board as to what it is that we're looking for, so we can generate some questions and then go from there.
As always, thank you for your follow-up here. I am of the opinion that we probably should be engaging professionals as well too to help us come up with our surveys rather than our survey questions. You're spot on that our objectives need to be directed to whoever is producing the survey, but the creator of the survey needs to be one that has the background and the expertise in the creation of a survey. I think more so just for protecting our own validity when we go back and communicate what we're finding to the community as well too.
Right.
So, I think that the process realistically is probably identifying who will prepare the survey first, and then us sitting down with them and having a conversation regarding our objectives, and then looking deeper into what the costs associated with doing that would be. I'm hesitant to think that that we might be able to do this in time of our meet and greet, just because of the time to both coordinate and undergo the process, but as well as for appropriate sampling to be conducted as well too. And I'm not a researcher by any means, but I love the aggressiveness, but I just think that might be a little too aggressive. And I think that one of the ways we get a really great win is providing information, qualitative and quantitative information, telling the story of what we're hearing from the community in a way that is valid and is undisputably done according to empirical best practices.
I just like the idea. For me, the Center for Opinion and Research has done a great deal of research and provided information about this whole idea of who is being, what community is being impacted and what region and the demographics, and I think we could piggyback on some of that, but yeah.
Did they give you a timeline on, and let's look at the decision, because that was an excellent survey that they did, and I agree with you, the results were very broad in context, and so we could see various variables of what they were able to study. Did they give you a time frame on, just hypothetically, how long they thought it might take?
How long they felt it might be? It's according to how many questions we have. So that's the thing that we have to find out. But I'll talk with her again, and then we'll sort of flesh that out.
I don't want to volunteer him, but I think Mr. Gippen is also pretty interested in this topic and this process too, and could be a real great, valuable resource. We had some conversations.
I think, well, we talked about that in the subcommittee, and I did offer to be involved that way. Yeah, thank you.
As it concerns the meet and greet, I think there could be a couple things that we could kind of meet the objective that you mentioned. It may be just asking one simple survey question that could be, perhaps the information could be available by the time of the meet and greet, which is about a month. But then to get a more comprehensive survey, you know, that would probably be something that we could do at another time and another meet and greet. But perhaps just taking one basic question, Mr. Gippen, you can weigh in on this, and then that would kind of just, if you wanted to, it could kind of meet where you are to have something to give, but then do something more comprehensive at another time.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I think there's two kinds of surveys I think are really kind of evolving here, and again, probably is really subcommittee stuff, and we talked about it at some length, but I think we really have two kinds of surveys in mind. One being, a scientifically conducted survey that gives us, verifiable data on whatever topics we want questioned. But I think there's some value, just as a community outreach, in what you might consider to be a more informal survey that really, it isn't going to be scientifically valid, but would be a way of getting people to tell us what they think. So it's two different things, and both have their value.
I wanted to have an idea wall where people could post their ideas after they're going to hear from us with a Q&A, and then maybe post their ideas. But yeah, I like the idea of maybe just presenting one question and then letting the whoever we deem to conduct the scientific survey thereafter.
Ms. Lewis, who's moderating the Q&A?
Yet to be determined.
Okay. Anything else? Oh,
Yeah, I have one question for Ms. Lewis. On the area where you speak about having the community be involved in helping some of the decision-makings of the board, do you have certain boundaries that are associated with that? I mean, if somebody wants to actually be part of the board, I mean, we did get an email. I don't know if all of us got it.
One of the things that input, there can be input, but they don't have a vote, so if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, just, if there's some guardrails set up, on how much they can delve into our business and what we're doing. So, thank you.
And under our rules that we have tabled for discussion as well, there is language that addresses the involvement of subcommittee members and non-voting members, which will probably be more fleshed out through our procedures.
Thank you, Mr. Constance.
do you have anything else, Ms. Lewis?
No, sir. Thank you.
While on the Community Engagement Subcommittee, did anybody have an opportunity to look over the draft admission statements that Mr. Costa did? Was anybody look at those? He sent those
Yes.
last week.
Oh, yeah, they were great.
Yes.
I thought.
I believe we're picking one of those. Yeah, it was two. Mr. Gippen, please. There was two, Mr. Gippen.
There were two.
I missed that, I'm sorry.
I honestly think I
I was reading too fast, I thought it was one.
No. We need
there
to
were
pick
two.
one.
Yeah.
We need to pick one. But what I did was I like options. So I provided the option of a statement or more so like a tagline. And so you can pick from either or, but please just pick one. You can shoot me or an email. You can send me an email with your favorite, or I don't know the best way to vote on it. I think that they all, and for our viewers and for our hosts, what we did was we decided that we were going to put together a mission statement. I provided a couple of drafts, which came directly from the language under the charter that just provide a sense of what our board is here and what our mission is.
So, I'm so sorry, I thought it was a both and, that we were going to have a tagline, and we selected a tagline, and then we were going to go ahead and adopt the entire mission statement. So I completely did not understand the process.
Well, that's the beauty of being an independent board. We can we can figure out what we want to do.
So, yeah, I think a tagline is good because it seems like we have a logo. So I think you have your tagline under the logo, but then we have a mission. And so, would you mind reading the two missions, Mr. Costa, really quickly? I mean, I think we can all just raise our hand when we like.
Before he,
We got to make a motion. I'm sorry, Mr. Gibbons. Excuse me, Mr. Gibbons.
and also, before he
The one that
does,
says he only read one, but we will make a motion.
before he does that, I had written, I don't know if it came through or not, because I'm still, all this IT stuff, but I had written next to the document, I like this one. Did that come through on your end?
I did see your response, correct?
Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
So then I won't raise my hand, because I don't remember which one I wrote, I like this one on, so.
Okay, so there's two optional mission statements. The first is, the Citizens Police Oversight Board strives to build trust among the Akron community and local law enforcement. And the second option is, Akron Citizens Police Oversight Board strives to improve police and community relations through external and independent review of local policing practices. And then there are a couple of tagline style options, which are the three are as followed. The first, fostering conditions to build trust and strengthen relations among Akron residents and local law enforcement. The second is striving to create the conditions to enhance trust in community law enforcement and safety for all Akron citizens. And the third is striving to strengthen trust in community law enforcement.
I'd like to make a motion for the second mission statement, to adopt the second mission statement. Excuse
I'll
me.
second.
You have mine, I don't read.
All right. We got a motion on the floor. We'll roll call for the second statement of the mission statement, which begins with Akron Citizens Police Oversight Board.
Before you do that, can you read that second one again, Brandon, if you don't mind?
Please.
Yes, the second option for a draft mission statement for the Police Oversight Board reads as follows. Akron Citizen Police Oversight Board strives to improve police and community relations through external and independent review of local policing practices.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Let's roll call the vote for accepting the second mission statement as the mission statement of our Oversight Board. Aniskevich?
Yes, is that the one that I commented on? You don't know? Okay, yes.
Gippin?
Yes.
Peoples?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Castle?
Yes.
Costa?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Boyd, yes. Is there a tagline we like? I think it's me emailed everybody if you want to pull it up.
Are we okay with having both a tagline and a mission statement? Is that okay?
Yes.
I'd like to motion that we adopt the second option for the tagline, which reads, striving to create the conditions to enhance trust in the community, in the community law enforcement and safety for all Akron citizens.
I second.
All right, let's roll call it. Any further discussion on any one of them? Because I think the tagline can just go up under the logo once we...
I just have a positive comment about that particular tagline. I have a thing about words, and I think the word striving is very poignant in this tagline, because when you're striving for something, that means that you're always working towards it. You're always working to make it better. And so it's not giving any false promises or anything like that. We are striving. So that's why I particularly like that tagline.
Thank you, Ms. Aniskevich. Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote to accept the second tagline. Aniskevich?
Yes.
Gippin?
Yes.
Peoples?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Castle?
Yes.
Costa?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Boyd, yes. Awesome, thank you, everyone. Vote passes. All right, Ms. Lewis, anything else from community engagement? Thank you so much, Ms. Lewis, to you and your team for your service and your leadership. Next, we'll go to Mr. Costa in Budget and Finance.
Okay, so not necessarily much of a report, but more so a response. If you recall, last week we had a discussion that was based upon the board compensation, but more so just with looking and taking a deeper look in terms of where the board currently is with respect to its budget and its finance. I believe the specific question that I was asked to do was to bring forth a cost analysis in order to speak to the contemplation brought forward to the board of considering the increase of compensation for board meetings. So I will apologize. This was a lot of information and data to gather, so I was only able to send out the cost analysis a little later earlier this afternoon, and I couldn't really find a sensible way to print out these Excel sheets in a way that just made sense. So I will say I want to do 3 caveats, and I also want to give a shout out to Steve Fricker, the finance director for the city of Akron, because Steve did a really phenomenal job in terms of linking up with me and working together so we could tease out and provide this. But there's ample information that's provided under the document that I sent out to everybody, which can be breakdown from a tab standpoint to see where we're currently at with the budget, board payments, compensation for our auditor, and as well as some additional helpful information that's provided within the document. I want to give a couple of caveats, and I want to let everybody know that this cost analysis was performed under a number of assumptions, and 3 key assumptions. That is, the first being that we're going to get an administrative person here for 6 months. Throughout the rest of the year. So this budget does account for us having an administrative assistant and paying them out for the remainder of the year. The second assumption is that we would have a deputy auditor for at least 5 months for the remainder of the year, and that we would hire somebody and that we would be paying out the compensation of the deputy auditor as allocated under our original budget. And the third assumption was that we would be meeting on a weekly basis until July 12th, which we had contemplated perhaps moving to bi-weekly meetings. We tried to get as pinpoint accurate as possible with respect to how we'll be paying compensation, what will be paid out in order to bring forth this cost analysis. And so what I guess the high level determination or recommendation that I want to bring forward is that we simply do not actually have it under the budget to increase our compensation. That may come as a surprise or a shock given the lack of employees that we have had, but I want to remind everybody is that just because our auditor has not been performing, we still have been paying him, and we still have been paying out his benefits. And based upon the amount of time that Mr. Young has collected, there's still a substantial amount of pay that he would be warranted to through the rest of the year. So in not having an auditor but yet still paying out the auditor, that is it's reality of what we're paying for. And actually to just highlight, I guess, just where things are actually at, as things stand, we would actually need to move over additional funds to our labor pool if in the event we are to renew the contract that Mr. Fields has. As the draft provides, I'll get into that a little bit more. As the draft contract provides, Mr. Fields is to be compensated $23,000 for the duration of the 12-week term. Now, if we were to renew that term, that would increase that cost total to a total of $46,000. And so, if you look at our compensation, as well as our auditor's compensation that we're paying out for the remainder of the year, in addition to assuming that we bring on a deputy auditor, as well as us paying out an administrative assistant, we're actually in a situation to where we don't have enough funding under our current budget. Now, let me back up. This is, the business attorney in me is incredibly conservative when it comes to doing financial analysis, and so we wanted to build in sufficient room and for these assumptions. I think it would be highly optimistic for us to think that we were going to be bringing in a deputy auditor within the next month, or maybe even within the next 2 months with the way that things have been going. And that is no slight at what's going on. It's just the reality of the position is difficult to hire for, and we want to make sure that we do a good job at doing it. And so if we do not, in fact, hire in a deputy auditor, and depending on how long it takes us to bring in our administrative assistant, I anticipate that is going to free up some budget dollars that will help us to prevent having to move over that much money in order for us to fulfill the service contract that we just voted to approve. But I say this I guess in bringing forward the opinion and the recommendation that the board does not seek to increase its compensation for moving forward, more so as not only as a matter of fiscal responsibility, but also I have my own personal qualms about us unilaterally increasing our compensation. If the board felt so strongly enough that that's something that needed to happen, then it would be my recommendation that we at least seek some sort of resolution from council or some type of body that is not us, because I personally don't feel great about it. And I think as we sit here and we talk about maintaining trust among the public, we have to make sure that our actions are doing that. And if that means us eating it a little bit on the compensation for the work that we're putting in, then I think that's a great sacrifice. So that is a feedback in terms of the tasks that I was asked to carry out, and I'm more than happy to answer or address any questions.
Brandon, thank you so much for being transparent about the budget and to Mr. Fricker in his absence, but we appreciate you doing that. I do agree with you in that I think moving forward, if we would like more compensation, I think it would only be fair to allow an external body to grant us permission to do that. The initial request that I made was in reference to having excess funding because so many positions currently not being filled. And with that, based on the use it or lose it theory, ideally it seemed more appropriate if we could reallocate those funds to increase our compensation. I don't particularly like when we feel that gaining trust of the public is contingent on whether or not we are compensated. I think most of us work in a field that we are compensated in, and because of that, I don't want my service to be muddied by the idea that I have to get paid for the services that I render as well. My care, my compassion, and my services are independent from the idea that my employer sees fit to pay me for it. But I appreciate looking into this. I would like to ask of the board, because later on this year will be coming up that we can request from council if we would like to increase our budget. It is very possible. And I'd like to hear from other members on the board if that's something they would like to do. If we could individually, very briefly discuss our personal, and I think we kind of done that, but not necessarily from everyone. What does everyone feel about requesting an increased budget to increase compensation?
And while everybody thinks for a moment before they're put on the spot, Ms. Reed, I certainly appreciate your desire to want to be efficient with all of our dollars and to be effective with it and to ensure that we're making the most of the resources under our management to ensure that the return on our investment is going to yield good results.
Chairman, this is probably a mixed HR budget question, but what is the compensation status of Mr. Young? Is he on sick leave, and if so, what is the extent that he's entitled to sick leave? Does that come out of our budget? I assume so, but maybe it doesn't. I don't know how the city works, but and this is a great document. Thank you, Mr. Costa, really is. But I don't altogether understand what the basis of his compensation is sitting tonight.
My understanding is it's totally coming out of our budget, and it's medical leave that we are still responsible to pay.
Do you know
at
offhand
his regular rate.
what is the duration of that under the city, I suppose the city regulations? Or has he accumulated sick leave? How does that work?
Yeah, I think very much he's accumulated it. There's still a debate over like an FMLA type situation. No paperwork has been submitted for that. So I think the city's just kind of in a wait and see pattern. But he definitely has earned sick leave, and we are definitely paying it out of our budget.
And I understand the assumption being that whether it's sick leave or it's regular compensation, that assuming his regular compensation for the rest of the year, only through November, is appropriate. I get it. I just didn't want to, I wanted to understand his status, and thank you for somewhat clarifying it. I guess it's still unclear.
And one thing I left out as well too, this budget assumes that we're going to hire an independent auditor at the rate that we had allocated. I believe it's like $91,000. So we could then, we can adjust that accordingly based upon the individual that we need to bring in, which then that would have overall budget implications too.
I agree with Ms. Reed totally, and I love providing service. I wanted to provide this service, and as I said last week, I don't think that one has to do with the love of providing the service has nothing to do with wanting to get adequately compensated for all the work that we're doing, and that's my one issue. And I know that some people on this board are saying, well, they didn't really need the money or care for the money. I don't think that the city can allow you to just not take your pay. So, my suggestion is if we do that and you don't want the extra money, then donate it to a charity, your favorite charity or something like that. That's the one issue. I just don't think that we're adequately compensated. Just to be factual and to be truthful, I don't think that we're being adequately compensated for all the work that we're doing, if you add in subcommittee work and all that type of thing. My other concern is the use it or lose it. That's my other concern, because we don't know what next year is going to bring us with this board, and what we may or may not have to do, what we may or may not have to pay for services or whatnot. So I just want to make sure that if you don't use it to increase our pay, that you make sure that we don't lose, what we already have for next year.
Yeah, so I think that I think what will be probably imperative is around the beginning / end of the third quarter, we take a critical look at where we're at. I'm pretty confident that we're going to use up our labor expenses, but that's going to be largely contingent upon what happens with our auditor, but also our hiring of our deputy auditor. But I would anticipate that what we really need to look at is our community engagement budget and making sure that we utilize all of our resources there. And I will always say, this board, we can get as creative as we want. We can seek external funding for other opportunities as well too. I had a brief conversation with our board chair on Saturday, just because I was so hyped up, because I was thinking about this. I left our last meeting pretty perplexed about the conversation, because from a human standpoint, we show up and we're sacrificing our own individual time, our lives, our families, our clients, worked to the extent. And I think that our focus really needs to shift on recruitment. We need to get excited about this team that we're about to build, like this all-star team that we're about to build to fill up this department. And I think that once we get that team together and assembled, an excited team that's so pumped about this mission that we just approved, that our workload is going to shift and look very, very different. And I think that our ability to focus on things, especially as we pass our rules and our procedures, and build the ability for this department to operate outside of for it to actually function, I think that is going to look a lot different. And so I'm just saying, I think we got to be patient, and we have to pump ourselves up. If we don't like all that we're being asked that we have to carry right now, that we got to get ourselves really hyped up about recruitment and get out and talk to as many people as possible and get an independent, a deputy auditor in here sooner. And I am looking to some things as well too. I'm hoping maybe we can get an extern through the law school to help us out, as well as an intern through the University of Akron to help us out with some communications as well too. So I won't say any more there. Sorry for.
And I truly agree with everything that's being said. I understand where Ms. Reed is coming from, and also Ms. Anaskevich's, and also appreciate, Mr. Costa, the work that you've done in really doing a cost analysis of our budget. I think it's really important. I think that what we have the opportunity to do as the year goes on, we set the tone of the budget for next year, right? So we may add more into that because we're learning now that, man, the amount of time it's taken from us as people, right? It's taking a little bit more than what any of us thought. We're doing a lot more than what any of us, I think, anticipated at the beginning. I think if there is one adjustment I would like to see made is that, especially for those who are serving on our committee, that should count as a meeting as well. How the subcommittee's meetings doesn't count for a meeting is really beyond me. And I think that's a good both and is how do we give service to the individuals who are going to those subcommittee meetings, I think would be beneficial, especially as we begin to possibly pull back from these bigger meetings to going to twice a month. That will, if you will, ratchet up a lot of our subcommittee meetings. So that's, to me, that's kind of a middle ground or a middle section possibly. And so my other question, Mr. Costa, was when I look at line 27, it goes back to a comment that Ms. Lewis made before. When I see this line 27 is information technology, and I see 6,900 for that. Is that funds that we could possibly utilize for a website build out if the board feels like that's the direction that we need to go and build our own website?
I need to just make a point of, I will follow up, because I don't know the exact answer. I know that an amount was allocated specifically, but I want to make sure that that doesn't account for any of the cost incurred, you know, like I don't know if there's internal webpage
Gotcha.
like cost, or
Yep.
if there was any cost occurred through like the city, like laptops, or the cell phone that Mr.
Yeah,
Peoples was provided as
The
well
computer
too.
purchases are only here for 13 grand that I see in line 21. So I see that here, as well as the cell phones, which I don't think none of us have,
I have one.
for 1,400. So no, I appreciate it because, and again, we have to decide, hey, do we want to outsource the building of a website, right? Or is there expertise in this room that can do it with it being managed by the admin that we're going to have? So these are just conversations I think we need to think about, because I think that us having a website that's independent, that's ours, is going to be, I think, powerful as we continue to build out and move forward as a board.
I think that we need a website yesterday, and we also need to think in terms of our presence across all social media outlets. And there is nobody who can do a website here. We're asking a lot of people in this room. If we have the budget, let's go for an external person to do the website and do it correctly.
So my only thought there, coming from a person who has built a website, is that you have to consider the trade-offs of the management of the website once we actually pay and it's like packaged and created. And so, you know, I think it would be probably more efficient to have someone involved with the process and really kind of roll that task and that function into like our admin position, like updating website.
Right.
But I have not gone down the rabbit hole of figuring out how much it would cost to bring on a contractor, and then how much the maintenance and the services would be from a follow-up perspective. So I can look into that. I know, you know, Squarespace, Weebly, or Wix platforms, you pay like an annual fee, and those are like relatively low, but the platforms are incredibly like stylistic, and a lot of websites that you see are you know, created through those platforms that that are actually really good, and you can go in and kind of move around and do yourself too. But
So
deeper.
my idea is simply contracting someone to provide the website, and then when our administrative person comes, they can do the maintenance and adding on to the website, events and information, contact, all that kind of stuff. But it's hindering us. And we see that in the community engagement aspect. It's hindering us.
Mr. Costa, to your point, are you saying that whoever our admin is, they need to be sitting alongside whoever this is outsourced to, so that they understand it and can go back and make the updates and do the things to the website that you're speaking of?
I think it'd be more efficient, yes, for us to train our admin, because then we don't have to reach out on a weekly basis when we're posting things to our website, or if we want to add a report, like when we launch our community report later this year or at the beginning of next year. I just think it's a lot more efficient for us to have someone in-house that can just do it and go in and make the website changes or our uploads, rather than us having to reach out to our support person. But it's not necessarily either or. You know, maybe there is an option there. I haven't looked through what a hybrid could be like, or whether or not that would be the option. But that's just my thought.
What would be more economical?
Again, I haven't done a detailed cost analysis to this point, but I think that it would be more probably economic for us to pay an annual subscription to for us to have a web-based platform.
Like GoDaddy, something like that?
GoDaddy's more usernames, but like Squarespace or like Wix, Weebly, for us to have an annual subscription. We pay that subscription, but then we have the ability to manage the web page and the website kind of as we see fit. And it's actually a lot easier than you all may think. It's not like HTML coding or even like more in-depth coding. It's literally like drag and drop, like put a picture, put a link, put a...
And who's going to put a picture, put a
Is that
link?
something the administrative assistant could do then?
I think that's something that administrative assistant could do pretty well. If you're able to manage a social media page, and I think that you could upload information to a website. But again, this is just me speaking without having actually done in-depth research in terms of the cost of bringing on a web page provider service.
Just for the sake of time, I just have a concern with us waiting until we have the admin 3 in place. I think this is something time and time again we're hearing is detrimental, just that lack of communication and our independence with how we can manage it, because I appreciate all of the city's help with us getting that page set up, but we have to rely on them to take things down or upload certain things, and there's definitely been some gaps that we're working through. So I'm just curious if it would be appropriate for us to maybe, and I'm happy to take this on or maybe collaborate with you, Mr. Costa, but maybe to get some of those quotes and be able to present them at our next board meeting and give some options and just to get the ball rolling.
We can build a website to ourselves, but somebody's got to help me.
I mean, I'll
If
help
we
you.
need to get this done.
I mean, I do it where I currently work, so I'm happy to help with that. But I think it is something that we can get up and running, and then when the admin 3 comes, I mean, we can kind of pass that torch and sit down and say, this is how we've been doing it. I definitely think it's something, it would be beneficial to get up and running, as to Ms. Lewis's point, yesterday, as opposed to waiting. Just my thoughts.
Okay, let's get the cost of figuring out both ways, and if the board is of the opinion that we want to build and manage our own, or if we want to bring on a service contractor, we will make that decision, and then we'll move forward with it. And if we decide we're going to build a website, then we're going to build a website.
Mr. Chair, I just want to make sure we don't move away from my original question. If I could just get everyone to kind of weigh in really quickly on what are their thoughts about compensation.
Yes, I don't think everyone voted or gave
Did anybody want to make any further comments about the compensation?
I'm satisfied with what we were hired under.
Thank you, Ms. Richards.
I like Chairman Boyd's suggestion that we could maybe explore, once we go to the biweekly board meetings, that we could consider the committee meetings.
I agree.
Okay. Is that all from your report, Mr. I'm sorry, Ms. Reed, go ahead.
Oh, no, Mr. Boyd, I thought that was an excellent idea that you brought to the table.
Is that all, Mr. Costa?
That's all.
All righty. Thanks so much for your report out. And next, we'll go to Mr. Peoples and complaints.
Nothing to report this week. I did have one complaint. Most of the things that I'm getting on the computer are non-complaint. They're mostly about warrants, what they should do. So I'm taking care of that. I'm keeping up a good log on all my calls that I'm making, follow-ups. Standing by, waiting for the phone to ring.
Okay.
And I will let you know about those hours.
Okay. Yeah, whenever you have those hours, Mr. Peoples, if you could just send us an email, and Ms. Castle, we could probably get that posted on our page as well, just that way the public has access and they're aware of that. And again, I have that key for you, so once we leave out of here, I can get you a copy of that.
All right.
All right. Ms. Lewis, did you have something?
I just had a question. Mr. Peoples is taking the complaint, so when an individual emails us in general with a complaint, is the point person you, Mr. Peoples? Okay. And then when we're responding to emails, do you think it'd be a good idea that when we respond to have a maybe formatted response and then reply to all so that we could see what the reply is? And I'm not talking about the complaint portion, I'm talking about just a general email, because we get emails and my concern is, are they being answered? And if so, who is answering them and what are they saying?
Excuse
Does that
me,
make
Ms.
sense?
Lewis? Ms. Lewis, I had that under new business, under D, to talk about the CPOP emails that we're getting, if you want to wait.
So, well, that was just under that arena of complaints and then moving down, because we didn't know, and I didn't know. And and then also, well, we've already answered.
Anything else, Mr. Peoples?
No.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to lean into agenda item number 5, where it's our new business. The first item is item A, the consolidation of some subcommittees. I put this on because I think the more we move along, what I'm starting to realize, at least from my perspective, is that it seems like to me HR is obviously its own committee, and I think that it makes sense to me, at least, that budget and finance falls under HR, almost like a subheading, because it seems like right now what we're working in and dealing with is a lot of HR things when it comes to our budget and finance, versus just having a budget and finance subcommittee, because, Mr. Costa, tell me if I'm right or wrong, you're pretty much that committee.
I wouldn't, well, Mr. Gibbon helps out a good deal, but also my,
No, he doesn't.
sometimes my schedule prevents, so, sorta.
All right. And so I'm going to lean on you, Mr. Costa, because I don't want to overtake you if you want to continue to stand alone. It just makes sense to me in the consolidation of it now that HR committee becomes a little bit stronger, and it seems like as we move forward throughout the year, we're going to need that, especially as we start, whether it's consultants, whether it's employees, understanding and knowing that compensation piece is going to fall hand in hand with that. So that is the reason for consolidating that, those two subcommittees.
I think it's a pretty good idea. I think that it then allows me to work more closely with Ms. Richards, who is really awesome, and as y'all all heard, I'm pretty pumped up about recruitment right now too, so it allows me to be involved with that process, but also to eliminate an additional committee meeting if unneeded. So I'm all for it and I support it.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on that. I thought that was an excellent idea. Half of what goes on in the HR subcommittee is contingent on what the budget is and so forth. Furthermore, I feel you don't need any help, but I would like you to have some help. You're doing an excellent job, but I think you deserve some help in our input, but you're doing a fantastic job. I don't want to, I'm not saying it to slight you in any way, but I would love for us to be available to assist.
I totally agree. Mr. Costas has made himself readily available to any and all questions that I have, has been super supportive of everything that we're doing and helpful in his comments. So just to smush that together, I think is a great idea.
So can I get a motion to consolidate the Budget and Finance Subcommittee within the HR Subcommittee?
I motion to consolidate the HR Committee and the Budget and Finance Committee.
Second.
All right, let's roll call vote. Anaskevich?
Yes.
Gippin?
Yes.
Peoples?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Castle?
Yes.
Costa?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Boyd, yes. All right, so we're gonna move on to the next is item B under new business, professional service contract. And I believe that is,
We already discussed that.
cool, awesome. Next is item C on new business, which is the retreat. Mr. Costa and Ms. Anaskevich.
Yes. Ms. Lewis, can you resend, I can't find, I've been looking for it since you said you sent me something on your speaker. I don't have it.
I text you.
Oh. All this information? I know you said that you would get back with you on Friday. Okay, so tonight, I am determined that we vote on something with this retreat. We have two proposals, one that Mr. Costa sent for a professional, and then Ms. Lewis also sent someone. And as far as the people who are going to do the retreat, because I have been sitting here looking for what Ms. Lewis sent me, but she texted to me, so I have to read it over. But we can always vote on that person on the person next week, the professional next week. But what I'd like to vote on tonight is whether or not you all want, most retreats involve a half day of training and then a half day of pleasure, if you will. So we've all been to college, I think, most of us anyway, and sitting in a room for 8 hours listening to somebody lecture to us about how to be a team, I'm not down with that. I'm not looking forward to that for an 8-hour period. So one of the persons, Miss Barbara Green, that Mr. Costa forwarded to me, actually there may be two things we could vote on. We might be able to do two half-day retreat sessions with her, like one now and maybe one later, to see how we progress later on, maybe in December or something like that. But I would like for us to vote on whether we want to do a half-day or a full day. And it looks like she would be willing to do a partial day. And then the second half of the day, you know, I looked into some, a boat trip that provides lunch, you know, and a tour of Cleveland. And I know sometimes when you used to being in Akron, when you say Cleveland, like, oh, I want to go out there. But, you know, we could double up on our rides or what have you. But I'm thinking a half day of training and a half day of relaxation, if you will, with lunch included. I've already explored the price of it. For all 9 of us, it's under $500. The boat trip is under $500, and it includes lunch and a tour on the boat in Cleveland. So, if you guys want to discuss any discussion about it, or questions, or?
I guess from my perspective, for the proposal that was just distributed for the strategic planning session, we need not vote on that now. I know everyone just got it, so I want to give adequate time to review. But I will say the service provider, Barb Green, is really a champion for organizations here in the local area. I've undergone strategic planning sessions with Barb before, and it was incredibly helpful, and this was for another board that I've served on in the past as well too. And I will say that the reason I really liked Barb was that she was incredibly eager but also understood the context and the importance of where our board is at right now, and has provided trainings to municipal bodies across the state that are larger than ours and has far more than the requisite experience to provide this. So I would ask that everybody take a look at that. I had another service provider who I can give you guys more information for, who had expressed some interest to do through Alchemy Inc. to do a bit of a almost a team, more so a team cohesion exercise and day. But I think that where we're at right now at the board is that, you know, we kind of need to get our strategic objectives and priorities together. So that's why I brought forward the proposal from Barb Green, and I would love and welcome any insight. The cost is there, I believe, on the third page, I believe quoted at $3,100.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I also know Ms. Green, and I'm very, very glad that she's willing to do this. I can't think of anyone better for the purpose. And I think in general, I think it's a good use of our public budget to do the retreat, because it will facilitate our ability to do the board's work better. I have to say my initial reaction, though, is that I would not want to see any public money used for what could be interpreted as not specific to the training. That is to say, lunch is lunch. I mean, if we're meeting over lunch, you know, we should have lunch. But the notion of using our budgeted public money for a boat ride in Cleveland, I don't think I can support that.
Mr.
Yeah,
Oh,
Mr.
sorry.
Well, there are other ways we can do a relaxation part of the day that doesn't include that. That was just something I threw out.
No, yeah, I tend to agree, Mr. Gibbon and Mr. Costa. The more I thought about this notion of the retreat, I've not thought about it favorably. I think going on a retreat in July or August is, yeah, it's just, for me, I don't think that's something we should do. I like maybe something towards the end of the year that we can start to build in, from a strategic plan perspective, allot the time for us to do that really well, because at that meeting, what I would like to see is that not only are we strategically planning, but also there's going to be, you know, we're going to have to create a budget and do all these type of things. And I get the essence, I guess, of a retreat from a standpoint of, we say a relaxation component. I think I'd have to get everybody's opinion on what you view as relaxation. But I just think for me, and again, this is the more I thought about it after our meeting last week, for me, I'm not in favor of a retreat this early. I'd rather wait towards the end of the year to where we had some reflective time. And I know it was a thing where the retreat also was about, hey, we have to get to know one another. And I would say, man, we've been together for, man, going on 10 weeks straight together. I'm starting to learn. I'm starting to learn each and every one of you. And also just through, I think, outside conversations. So I think there's time within these past 10 weeks that I've talked to, I think, every board member, whether it's on a phone call or we've met one-on-one to kind of talk and just discuss, I think, ourselves personally. And so I would encourage everybody to have that time from a getting to know one another perspective versus allocating a retreat for something to like. I'm all for team building. I think all that stuff is good and healthy. I think team building, though, is maybe an hour, 90 minutes. I think the breadth of what we do needs to be a thing where we're getting ready to continue to grow stronger as a board, but also to manage the department that we're going to have oversight on and continue to work those things out. But I just wanted to make my comments. This is not against anybody. I'm just giving my comments.
Mr. Chair, so Brendan, thank you for providing this information. This sounds like this is going to be excellent. My opinion is, I believe based on the task at hand that we have and the responsibility that we have to the community, I think anything that we can do early on that would require, that could involve strategic planning for this particular retreat is crucial. To that end, I think while some of us have been able to build positive relationships with one another, not all of us have had that opportunity to really get to have those personal relationships. And because of the individual that you are, Mr. Boyd, you're just that person where you make everyone feel like we are coming over for Thanksgiving. You just have that way to reach people, but not all of us have the ability to reach each other or others in the same way. So because of that, I think the retreat is important. I've never had a personal there are a few people I've not had a personal conversation with in this room. And there's others that, we talk regularly. So with that in mind, I think because of the tasks that we have, the necessity for us to be on one accord and for us to have the cohesion to be able to manage the concerns of the community, I think strategic planning early on is vital.
I agree, and if this board votes to not have a team building retreat, I'm fine with that, but then my plan B would be to, maybe every time we meet, we sit somewhere differently, because there are people on this board who have I feel have bifurcated themselves off from some of the other members. There's some cohesion, I feel, that's going on between one or two people that doesn't include everyone. And I think that's something a retreat could help with. A trained professional like Miss Green could help us with that type of thing. And I agree with what Ms. Reed said. You are the kind of person who would invite everybody over for Thanksgiving if you could, but everyone's not like you. And everyone on this board is not like you, and everyone on this board doesn't think the way you think. And I just feel that we truly need a professional to come in. We're all new. None of us knew each other. As far as I know, none of us knew each other before we came on this board. Everyone's very cerebral on this board, and sometimes it's difficult when you're dealing with 9 people who are brainiacs. It's very difficult, and we need someone to help give us some guidance. Now, if you think July is too soon or whatever, that's up for everyone to vote for. I am not trying to make a unilateral decision about this, but we need some team building training. We need this, I feel, whether we do it now or in December. I don't know, but, and if we're not going to do it, then I'm going to propose that we, for the next however many times we meet, everyone sits somewhere different, sit next to someone else that you haven't sat next to.
Ms. Lewis?
I think since we slated July 21st, that we should go forward with it. And I think
22nd.
that, I beg your pardon, 22nd, I have surgery on. But team building, communication, and conflict resolution and strategic planning, I think we need all 4 of those going forward. We're in a crucible somewhat most of the time, and so it's just important to me to get to know where does this person stand and why, and what is the communication style going forward, and I think we need that, and I think we needed it early on, and I think we still need it. I don't think we need to wait.
Let me just say this. I never said I wasn't for a retreat. It's not what I said. What I said was, I think that for what you just described, that sounds like something all day, because you named 4 different things. I'm always going to consider the capacity of time, just because I think that's important for the longevity of this board and our energy towards it. And so I'm not for not having a retreat, and I appreciate the comments, Ms. Aniskevich and also Ms. Reed, and I'm not looking for anybody to be like me at all. I'm for it. I just thought it was kind of early. That's just my opinion. But if everybody votes that we have it and go forward on the 22nd, and we're voting whether it's a half day or a full day, I just represent one vote. So I'm gonna vote the way that I vote, and if majority says, hey, do it, then guess what, we're gonna do it. So I wanted to make that clear. I never said I wasn't for a retreat. It's just, to me, is this the time to do it, is what my question is.
Mr.
And
Chairman?
just keep in mind that Ms. Lewis changed her schedule for the 22nd.
Okay?
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
Mr.
I'm recalling that the initial plan, even though we didn't make it, you know, was that we were going to be having a retreat fairly early on. I mean, it was planned. It was going to be at the Bounce Center and all that. The city had undertaken all that, and then of course what happened, and we were delayed even being seated, and there hasn't been time for it. I think the initial thinking about that was correct. I mean, I honestly, and I've said this publicly, I mean, I'm just amazed at how well we have worked together. You know, given this crucible that we were thrown in. And I think literally, I mean, Ms. Lewis, I think we might have met once or twice, but I didn't know anybody, and I think no one had relationships. I think we've done marvelously well, but, you know, I think we'll benefit by being able to just do a little bit what you were saying, Ms. Reed, which is just kind of get to know each other a little better. I mean, ironically, those of us who were at what was the second police training evening, that strange evening now in retrospect, when was going on outside while we're there talking, you know, and there wasn't time, so they had us all talking about each other, about ourselves. I mean, this has been a strange process, and I think we've done well, but I really think we would benefit by keeping that date that we've had on the 22nd and using it well,
Just very quickly, I think we're going to be onboarding new employees, and I think that our strategic vision for how this board mini department operates could inform the way that we structure those positions, and I think overall could really help us to, you know, we keep on talking about that we're building a plane while trying to fly it at the same time, but the strategic plan could provide us with a blueprint. And I think I always say that, you know, it's easier to figure out where you're going or to get to where you're going a lot quicker if you've got a guide. So I am a fan of actually doing a strategic planning retreat sooner than later.
I like that analogy, building a plane while still trying to fly it. Go ahead. I was going to make a motion, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement with having the retreat on the 22nd. I have mixed feelings about half day or full day, but I'm up for either.
Well, anybody else? Well, I'll make a motion that we have a half-day retreat with Ms. Green, and then if we want to bring her back later on in December, you know, the way this reads, she's willing to do 2 half-day sessions, and then half-day training, and then go to lunch somewhere in town and call it a day.
Is that half day on the 22nd of July?
Yes.
Second.
Roll call vote. Aniskevich?
Yes.
Gippin?
Yes.
Peoples?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Castle?
I just had one quick question. Are we sure that Ms. Green is available to facilitate on the 22nd?
I told her the tentative day that we selected, but I will circle back with her to ensure that that does work, but I believe the 22nd does work.
Okay, because I'm just concerned with us moving forward with the motion contingent if we are moving forward with Ms. Green, because my understanding was we are going to wait for some time to review this. So is this contingent on Ms. Green's availability, or are we just moving forward with the motion for the retreat?
We're moving, the motion is that we have a retreat on July 22nd with whoever we choose for a half day, 4 hours, and then have a lunch here in the city.
Okay.
That's the motion.
Thank you, yes.
So this isn't related to Ms. Green doing this particular retreat. This is just moving forward with the retreat date.
Right, and after I have a chance to read the perspectives that Ms. Lewis gave me, then next week we can vote on the person.
Can I be, and I'm so sorry because I know we have a vote on the table. I just want to be mindful that next week that's going to be our last meeting because we're moving to every other week after that. Is that correct? Did I misunderstand that?
God. See, this is why we should not,
I just wanted to make that clear because that means that the next time we come back, if I'm doing math right, we will see each other we'll see each other at the retreat.
Then I guess we need to vote on Ms. Green tonight.
Let's continue with the vote that is currently going forth, and then we can vote on Ms. Green, I guess, next. Is that fair, Mr. Mr.
Yes.
Gibbon, is that correct? Okay.
Ms. Costa?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Boyd, no.
All right, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the independent consultant for the retreat on July 22nd as Ms. Barbara Green.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Anaskevich?
Yes.
Gibbon?
Yes.
Peebles?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Castle?
Yes.
Costa?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Boyd, yes. Something that needs to be said, Ms. Lewis? Mr. Costa?
I was, I guess just in the matter of fairness, I think there were some additional proposals to be considered. And so I wanted us to, if nothing else, I wanted to review the materials of the person that you were going to bring forward.
Oh, yes, yes.
And if nothing else, for us to maybe look for an opportunity to get them involved to the extent it may possible.
Can you email that? I know you said you texted
we've
it to
already-
me. Can you just email it to
We've
everyone?
already voted. Yeah, we've already voted.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. To
Yeah.
the extent possible, we try to
Oh, okay.
incorporate them at a later date and whatever, skills
Gotcha.
or value they may be able to add to the board since we did just vote.
Okay. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, we do have to notice this retreat, correct? Okay, thank you. Okay, item D under new business is Citizens Police Oversight Board email. Ms. Anaskevich, you brought that up?
I did, but I'm going to change my mind. I expected a full house tonight based on everything that happened, and I'm glad that, we're being able to move forward. But I'm concerned about emails that we're getting from people about everything under the sun. Like, there was one individual, and I think we all received it, who was disclosing his PII information, personal identification information, stating that he had heard that the police had a warrant out for him, and he wanted us to look into it. And my concern is that there are people in the city who just aren't sure what we're here for. I mean, that's clear. They're just not, and that's just one example of what we've gotten. We've gotten other emails about people asking us to look into the Department of Justice for them based on what they believe happened to them or what they say happened to them. So what I had wanted to do was just go through the flow chart, just recite the flow chart for those who might be watching online, and then I had brought copies for people if we had a full gallery just to pass out, so they can understand what our role is as it is right now, what our role is as a police oversight board, and how that flow chart works and how we are incorporated into that flow chart. But you guys are talking about putting together this website, so if you're going to put it together fairly soon, we could just post the flow chart on the website so that they would know what the process is. The general public will know what the process is for filing a complaint at the beginning, and then how it ends up with us as a police review board.
I think some of that will be mediated by the community engagement subcommittee work when we talk about that infographic Ms. Lewis is referencing. So us just being able to share out that information. So my perspective in the meantime is we receive these emails. I do think it's important that we still engage with the senders of those emails, just to let them know, hey, we received your email. Unfortunately, that's not under the scope of the board. But I think that just goes with time as we continue to communicate what our mission is, what our objectives are, and move forward.
Okay, and I totally agree with what you're saying, but one individual was told that that's not within the scope of what we do, and that was not an acceptable answer to that person. He wanted to argue about it and kept sending emails, and I just stopped responding because he wasn't hearing it, you know. So I'm just saying that there are people out here who believe that we're here to do a function that we absolutely have no authority to do, and it would be helpful. I'm all about education. I'm all about educating people, especially the public, letting them know this is the flow chart as it stands now. You know, we have rules in the making, new rules in the making, but as it stands now, this is the flow chart. This is how we this is how we will process complaints based on this flow chart and how it's set up. And I've, you know, so, and I also agree with, I believe you stated last week, for one person to be the person to respond to these people when they send them the random emails. To just one person respond, because literally there are people who aren't taking no for an answer, even though the scope of what we do has nothing to do with what they want us to do for them.
Yes, Ms. Lewis.
So, okay, to respond to your specific point about a point person, I will leave that one for just a moment. In respect to a website, I think that your observation makes a very poignant, point, is that there are additional needs outside of the scope of what we do. But also, just from an observation standpoint, I mean, we just adopted a resolution last week saying what our authority is. So I don't think it's unnecessary or unreasonable to think that people aren't entirely clear on what we do. I think one thing that we can do to address this is once we do build our website, we could have like a resources page that says, okay, this is what we do, however, here are some additional resources. For instance, you know, you could go to the University of Akron's monthly legal clinic in order to get assistance with re-getting your driver's license, like which they do. So I think, and that's where the community engagement subcommittee comes in, because y'all are capturing all of that.
Exactly.
But I don't know how quickly we're going to have a web page out. I was kicking myself in the butt as I was sitting here, because I thought about the heightened security requirements for us to actually have a web page, and then I was thinking, okay, wait, maybe it does make sense for a contractor to be doing this and someone that's got additional protections. So I'm sorry that doesn't speak to your point about who specifically is responding to emails, but I think that that's something, I think that we just got to let people know, like, hey, you know, this is what we do. Here are the resources that I know of to the extent possible. And once we do have a more robust web presence, we make it a priority to tee up and highlight all of the county and local resources that may be able to address someone's issues or concerns.
I was under the understanding last week that we clarified that Mr. Peoples was going to respond to complaints and Mr. Boyd was going to respond to all other inquiries, or direct us to respond as needed.
Yes, Ms. Richards, that was my understanding.
Yeah, Mr. Peoples, did you receive that email about the young man who wanted us to look into the warrant that he thinks the police have out for him? And did you receive that email? Did you respond to him about that?
No, not yet.
I think it's important, too, to be sensitive, and it's a good idea to have these 2 point persons, because we want to make sure that we are sensitive to people's needs. And one of the things we did discuss was a resource database for people, because everybody doesn't know. And so if they reach out to us, for example, with a concern that we don't, that we're not capable, or that we're not put here to address, we can say, hey, go to such and such and such and such, and you can find that. Thank you very much. And then let that go, and instead of getting into antagonistic kind of thing, that we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that if somebody has an issue, and maybe they are reaching out to who they think can help them. So we may not be able to help them, but we can point to someone who can, and leave it at that, instead of castigating someone or that kind of thing, because we really want to be careful. We really want to be careful.
Well, I mean, it, I was the one who was getting yelled at because I said I couldn't, that was way outside our purview. We couldn't do this. And I even, this was several weeks back, I even emailed him a copy of the flow chart. But it didn't matter. He thought we should just step in and handle this issue for him. And I just, I don't ever want to turn my back on any citizen, but there are also, if someone's just not wanting to understand, what you're telling them, I don't know what else to do. So, other than to just not respond anymore after having been in a two-day dialogue with the person. So that's my time line to be in a two-day dialogue with one person over the same issue who doesn't want to follow the protocol of how it's set up on how you file complaints. So maybe we should just decide that only one person, when we all receive these emails that are outside of the scope of what we do, maybe we should just designate one person, and maybe now it's Mr. Peoples, to just respond.
Yes, I think that's what we're going to do moving forward. So it should be Mr. Peoples, and Mr. Boyd will respond to any other like media inquiries and so forth. So I think just moving forward, and Mr. Peoples, you can always direct them to 311 if there's any resources that are not readily available. 311 is a great registry of resources.
Thank
you. All right, Mr. Boyd, sorry.
One other thing, are you planning to respond to that guy? Because he's probably going to email us again.
Yeah, I'll get to him tonight. Yeah, I'll respond to him tonight.
Okay.
All right. Anything else regarding that? Right, okay.
I think just to reiterate, last week we also mentioned that when we're responding to emails we receive at that general CPOB, that we're going to do reply all so we can all manage what's being said and who's getting a response. So just to be cognizant of that as well.
All right, going on to item E, which is the logo. I think when we counted it up, it was 4 and 4, and I think Ms. Castle was the only one that voted something else. So if you have it and you want to like circle the one that you want, pass them down to me. Hopefully we can have that finally complete regarding a logo.
Isn't this the one that's chosen? Is this the one that got the most votes?
These two. So we got to vote between these two. We're not going to have two logos.
Oh, two. They're both on the same page.
Yep.
Duh.
So when you do that, just swing them around to me and we'll get that done. The next thing is, I think we already talked about the website. So that is the last thing as far as our new business. If I can get a motion to move. Yeah, I need a motion to move into executive session. To discuss personnel matter. To discuss personnel matter. Thank you, Mr. Skippin.
Motion to move into executive session in order to discuss a personnel matter.
I got a second?
A second.
Second.
Roll call vote. Aniskevich?
Yes.
Gippin? Yes. Peoples?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Castle?
Yes.
Costa?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Boyd? Yes. Thank you so much, everybody. We're going to move into executive session. When it's over, we'll invite you back in. Thank you very much.
Just to make it clear, particularly the media, I think it is contemplated there would be a vote when we come back in regular session. Is that correct?
Yeah, can we make a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second,
Aniskevich?
yes.
Gippin? Peoples? Lewis?
Yes.
Castle? Costa?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Boyd,
Mr.
yes.
Gippin, can I get everybody for 5 seconds so we can take a group picture?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
We didn't vote on that.